good morning, good afternoon, good evening, family. Welcome to the Mental House. I am your host. Sure, y'all know that by now. I'm your host, Khadijah. Thank you for being out there. Whatever side of the diaspora that you may be on, I want to welcome you to the Mental House. I am your host, Khadijah. I'm going to get right into this because it has been brought to my attention through a lengthy email um, that it was a person's opinion that I minimize domestic violence, that I said domestic violence is acceptable, and that they were shocked that I had pretty much given abuse um, a cosign, a condoning. I mean, uh, well, actually, not a condoning, but giving it an approval, a stamp of approval. So let me say first and foremost, I am never, ever going to say that violence and abuse is okay in a relationship. I did not mean to give that impression, nor did I mean to minimize abuse. And for that, I apologize sincerely from my heart, because that was not my intent. Okay, let's get that straight. First and foremost. Oh boy. And especially those of us, or myself, since I'm responsible for that video, uh, who have been on both ends. I've been a perpetrator of violence, and I've been a victim of violence. I grew up, I always say, I told you, I grew up with a lot of brothers, and my brothers were rough, and there were a lot of times that if people outside of our home knew what we were doing and then they would have been shocked when we showed up in church or somewhere mosque on a Sunday. And what I mean by that is, I remember we weren't actually taught how to emotionally um, resolve our issues. So one of my brothers, I hit in the head with a bottle, in the back of the head, and he never saw it coming. One of my brothers, I remember pulling a knife on him because he kept berating me and insulting me in front of his new girlfriend, who happened to be of a different ethnicity, and that already made me mad. And then he was showing off, so of course I took it up in my mind that, so this is the kind of violence that, as a child or as a young person, um, I have been a perpetrator of. I had another brother who was the black sheep, I consider, pretty much, of the family, and of course, like everybody else, we used to go upside his head a lot. Okay, it was obviously he had severe emotional problems, but no one addressed those. We would just handle it by going upside his head. So there's all types of abuse and on the spectrum, and this is in my childhood. So as you can probably imagine, although I didn't see my parents fight, I've never saw my parents take swings and slugs at each other. This is what the children were doing. This is how the children were externalizing or manifesting the tension that was between the adults. Okay? And then, even though we never saw them fight, we all fought each other. So my threshold for anger, protecting myself, all those things come from the perspective of having to defend myself against all this male energy, right? Okay. So my threshold for anger or what violence is could be different than somebody else's. However, once I learned better what is acceptable and what is not, I really understood that yes, emotional abuse and physical abuse is something that is totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. Now, I'm saying that to say, when you have two people who have come from two totally different backgrounds, who have been educated, brought up, uh, familiarized with life in two different parents and different perspectives, when they come together, surely there's going to be conflict. And I would be kind of skeptical of your relationship if you never had conflict, because now I don't even know how you would ever resolve it if you did. So it's not so much of trying to avoid having the conflict. Sometimes it's the way you handle the conflict that's important. I can't handle the conflict anymore about my brother berating me and trying to, or doing certain things that I thought was going in my personal belong, whatever I thought that they violated me for. I can't go up and hitting people upside the head with bottles, um, because that's inappropriate. Now, when I was a child, I did childish things and things that were done from a perspective of not even knowing sometimes how serious the consequences could be. But now we're all adults. But that makes still the effects of that made my threshold and my tolerance probably for um, anger or what I'm saying is abuse that possibly jaded my upbringing until I learned better. And this is very important. This is very important. So, what came out of that was a shell that made me angry, um, and it was acceptable for me, at least, because I thought I was protecting myself. Now, once I began to understand that that was a big shield that I put up in front of me, and it was really from unresolved emotional pain, then it began to chip away at the wall that I had built around myself. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. Now, once we got to this point, I was just trying to say that it's natural for people to have conflict. Now, I don't mean that kind. I was speaking in a little more evolved kind. I might get in trouble for saying this because some things are deal breaker in a relationship, okay, and some things are not, in my opinion. You may not have anything that's a deal breaker in your relationship, and you have no boundaries, and your life could be like a house without any windows. I mean, with just no window panes, just windows. People run in and out, all of it, all around. For me, just say if I was in a relationship, if I was married, uh, and my husband cheated on me, that wouldn't be so much grounds of divorce, in my opinion, than if the person cheated and then they uh, had a child. You see the difference? Because now I'm looking at a bunch of irresponsibility. Now I'm seeing it affecting us and so many more. So now that will probably be a deal breaker for me if that's what I was into. So now you understand what I'm saying? There are certain things when I say acceptable, and when your husband or your partner or somebody tells you they cheated on you, you might just get so mad you might shake them. You fucker. Okay? But that doesn't mean you're going to leave. So to me, that's acceptable. Yeah. Now, to somebody else, that might be totally off the chain because they may be coming from the mantra. A person may never, ever, ever, ever put their hands on a person. And in that case, they would be right. But in my case, I don't know if I would be so quick to give up my relationship like that. I would be so disgusted, and that would probably be something I could do. Or I probably would, ooh, I could slap the person. Yes, I think I could. And then I could take if they slapped me. And I think that we will both be mature enough and wise enough to know. And more than likely, they wouldn't slap me. They probably would just push me down or something like that to let me know that that's a boiling point. And I will respect that. I can respect that. So those are things, little minor things I'm saying that, in my opinion, are minor. And that's totally unrelated to punching somebody in the face, because I think that's what I said that really offended somebody. And again, I did not mean that. So hopefully I've explained that. Um, and again, sometimes I get carried away and I say things, but I want to keep it real with you all. I believe you cannot have a relationship without having some kind of conflict. And if you are, how do you handle your conflict? Because to me, that's the most important base. And that's what I meant in that video. And lastly, I want to say, I don't get caught up in that little campaign that they do every October, I think it is, or it becomes Domestic Violence Month. It should be, every day should be Domestic Violence Day, because the more you get in touch with your emotions, the more you can handle what is going on and how you expressing those emotions, right? And one of the mantras that you always hear the people repeat is, a man may not hit a man may never ever 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 hit a woman no matter what under any circumstances. When the data shows that women are more violent than men if you count throwing things, kicking, biting, um, you see, shoving, pushing. If now the difference is when the man hits, the the effect of that is more devastating. And so that's why it looks worse. Now, I'm not saying this to condone women going to beat up men and saying that men don't, are innocent or anything. I just want you to hear me out. Let me tie it together. There are some women that think it's okay to really kick and punch and beat up the man for no reason. And because I said that, in that case, solving a conflict like that, I don't mean it that way. That is abuse. That is abuse. I said under extreme circumstance. That's what I mean. As if somebody got me pregnant, or my husband got somebody pregnant, and I did not want to. It was in an affair, and I didn't want to leave the relationship. I could see myself shaking the person. If my partner was in an affair, I could see the person shaking the person. Okay? That's not every time I get mad and because he didn't do this and pow, I slap him upside the head. And because this person didn't do this and I said, pow, I punch him. Though, that's abuse. So I want to be clear for every particular circumstance. This transcends whatever kind of relationship that you're in. Okay? So don't come and tell me, well, I'm in a gay relationship and then you didn't mention. Don't do it. I'm trying to explain to you what I meant as logically as I can. Okay? As logically as I can. So, with that being said, if you are coming together with the person, I would like to see how you resolve conflict, because that's important. Okay? And that is where I think I was coming from that problem. that space. There are a lot of times when we might shake somebody or feel like shaking somebody because it's not a deal breaker, and you would rather do that than to just break the whole deal. Now, this is not an everyday occurrence, so that's not what I was mentioning. That's not what I'm saying. So please don't take that as Khadijah is okay with violence, because Khadijah ain't said nothing about you okay with people beating up people. But I'm saying that because I want you to keep in mind that mantra again that happens every October, that pretends that men are not on the end of abuse, and that women and because a lot of men are around so many women that are emotionally challenged, just like they are emotionally out of balance, they think that it's normal for sometimes women to perform that way when it's not normal at all. Okay? And the thing about it is they don't report it. They don't report that their girlfriends hit them and kicked them because they wouldn't dare tell anybody. Okay? So I'm not condoning any of that kind of stuff, whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're gay or straight, whether kind of relationship you're in. I'm not talking about holding people emotional hostage and emotional prisoners and all that in the name of love. Bam. No go. It's not what I meant. Okay? So I just wanted to make sure I addressed that. And I knew I was all over the place, but hopefully y'all got what I meant. Okay? Now, in the meantime, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe. I'm going to see you next time in the Mental House. Bye.